You're listening to the Main Street Deal, part of Main Street Media. I'm Jordan. It's Thursday, May 21, 2026. Today's story is about Joseph, who bought an industrial equipment and supply distributor in Bensenville, Illinois. Joseph Cruz spent most of his career in finance. By the time he started seriously looking to buy a business, he was sitting in a job that paid north of $400,000 a year. That is the number worth holding on to for a minute, and because the W-2 earner version of this story is almost always told as somebody escaping a salary they hated, Joseph wasn't. He was good at the job was good to him. He left it anyway, because the math on owning a thing of his own had started to feel more honest than the math on owning more of someone else's spreadsheet. The search took the shape that searches usually take when a finance person runs them. He ran the screens, he talked to brokers, he looked at deals that were too big, deals that were too small, deals that looked great, until the quality of earnings report came back and pulled the curtain. What he eventually landed on was not glamorous. It was a small industrial equipment and supply distributor in Bensenville, Illinois, a flat warehouse town tucked up against O'Hare Airport on the west side of Chicago. The kind of business that sells the bolts and the fittings and the safety gear that keep other small companies running. Revenue the year before he bought it was about $1.2 million. The deal closed in December of 2024. The purchase price was $536,000. That worked out to roughly 2.25 times seller's discretionary earnings, a fair number for a small industrial distribution business of that age and size. The capital stack is worth saying out loud because it's a clean example of how a deal at this scale actually gets done. Joseph put in $75,000 of his own equity. He took out a $550,000 SBA 7 loan structured to a roughly 2 times debt service coverage ratio, which is a conservative target his lender insisted on. The seller carried a $55,000 note, and critically, Joseph negotiated a $50,000 earnout tied to performance, plus a $25,000 cash holdback at closing as protection against the kinds of surprises that show up in the first 90 days. Earnout and holdback together are the two terms you should write down if you take nothing else from this episode. The close was the easy part. Year one was the part where the story almost broke. Joseph had inherited a small team, and at the center of that team was the general manager. The general manager who knew the customers, knew the suppliers, knew where the inventory was actually kept versus where the inventory was supposed to be kept. About midway through year one, the general manager left. That is the conversation no buyer wants to have, and Joseph had it. Here is where it gets interesting. Joseph did not panic hire. He stepped into the role himself. He took over the customer relationships personally, picked up the phone when contractors called in, walked the warehouse, watched what the business actually did instead of what the org chart said it did. And while he was doing all of that, revenue grew. Not by a little. Year one closed at roughly $1.5 million, up from the $1.2 million the business did the year before he bought it. That is 25% revenue growth. In the same year, the general manager walked out the door. His target for 2026, the second full year of ownership, is $2 million in revenue. That would put the business roughly 2/3 larger than the day he signed the closing documents. The turning point in his own framing is captured in 5 words he keeps coming back to. Life is just brighter. He said the work is harder, the responsibility is heavier, and the comfort of the salary is gone. But the work is his, and that changes the texture of every Monday morning. The protection against losing his GM came not from a clever org chart, but from the fact that he was willing to do the job himself the day she left. The lesson for you, if you are in this search right now, is two parts. One is structural and one is personal. The structural part: negotiate downside protection into your purchase agreement before you fall in love with the deal. Earnouts and cash holdbacks exist because year one surprises are not the exception. They are the baseline. If your seller refuses both of those, ask yourself what they're trying to keep you from finding. The personal part: if your plan for year one assumes that the key employee stays, your plan does not survive the calendar. The owner has to be the backstop. Not the strategist, not the visionary, not the absentee owner mailing in a check. The backstop. So this week, before your next call with a broker, write down what you would actually do, by name and by role, if the most important person in that target business walked out the door the Monday after you closed. If your answer is anything other than, "I would do that job myself until I hire the replacement," the deal isn't ready for you yet. That's it for Thursday. Find all of Main Street Media's shows wherever you listen. Subscribe, leave a review, and I'll see you Monday in the deal room.